How kola iuha ichichab. This is Cut to the Chase number 22. Today is July 1st, 2021, and I greet you all as friends, each and every one of you. I thank you for tuning in. I thank you for your thoughts, for your thumbs up, for your likes, for your shares. Very, very importantly, I always urge all of our listeners to share this stream. This is one of the only ways that we get the show out. As you all know, Cut to the Chase, powered by Lakota People's Law Project and by Last Real Indians, also my personal public page, I guess you could call it, Chase Alone Iron Eyes. It's broadcast through all of those channels as well as on our YouTube channels. But this show does not happen. Cut to the Chase doesn't happen unless you, the viewers and the listeners, spend a little bit of time with us. It depends on listeners and viewers like you who are seeking the truth, you who speak truth to power, you who speak on items and inform yourselves on these issues that the mainstream simply will not cover. This is why it's important to tune in. If you can catch it live, that is blessing. It's time and energy and space that we get to spend together. But if you can't catch it live, we urge you not to worry, because we have cataloged all of our episodes on the podcast. Wherever you listen to podcasts, search Cut to the Chase, Iron Eyes, subscribe. Again, Lila Wopila Tonka, big thanks to our financial subscribers. We will continue to push forward. We will continue to push onward. And I just want to say thank you for showing up. I have quite a rundown for you tonight. We've been very, very busy. As you know, churches are burning in Canada, perhaps in what is now called the United States. First and foremost, I want to address the topic of the burning churches, because they are not burning without reason. There is a body count. It seems inhumane to even say it like that, but we are going to be forced into uncomfortable spaces, and we all need to let this happen. Of course, you all know that I'm speaking about the residential school and boarding school horrors. We are uncovering horrific truths that we always knew as Indigenous peoples, but the rest of the world is finding out, and we are in a grieving process. That's why we have to go through it. We have to confront it as part of that process, that grieving process. We also seek a healing. And that's the second item I want to speak on, is my experiences in Washington, D.C. at the National Indian Gaming Association. I was able to partake, and our crew at Cut to the Chase and also the Leonard Peltier podcast received permission to document the healing circle that was organized there, even though it wasn't organized for the purpose of media production, but they were generous enough to grant permission. And I am fully aware that our stories need to be told. Otherwise, they simply don't get told, or somebody else ends up telling our stories. But though that we will spend some time on deconstructing just what we're going through as Indigenous peoples. But while we were in Washington, D.C., we were also, and some of you know who followed our trip there, that we were able to run into organizers, congressional reps who were outside the National Museum of the American Indian at the Native American War Memorial, Veterans Memorial. And they are organizing for Remove the Stain Act activity that is involving the Wounded Knee Massacre Medals of Honor that were given out. There's an effort to rescind those, and we will cover that. After that, I'll be able to recap the work that we were able to do on the ground on behalf of the Leonard Peltier Defense Committee. And I'll finish up with what is happening at Line 3. There's critical developments that are happening right now, and that's our rundown. And I want to get right to it tonight because we are in a world of hurt. We are in a world of challenges and hardships as Indigenous nations, and for our allies who are also joining us in calling out for the truth and for the healing. We are now confronting the enormity, the truth of genocide denied, genocide that has been denied not only to Indigenous peoples, but to everybody in what is now called Canada, what is now called the United States. The conscience shocking horrors of child rape committed by the Catholic Church, by priests, by nuns who have been given legal protection all this time. When we say that they hid it, they have been given legal protection by the highest levels, the upper echelons of the Catholic Church. We are now unearthing mass graves and validating what we have known all along, that these are not schools. They call them residential schools and boarding schools, but these are not schools. These are government-sponsored, church-executed, church-sanctioned violence. These are murder scenes. These are crime scenes. Our children were subjected to unspeakable depravities of grown men and women of the cloth. I mean, why do you think that we speak the English language today? Our whole lives require trigger warnings. How do you think that our family systems of clan and kinship were disrupted? How do you think we ended up in broken families? I mean, how do you think churches are present on every tribal nation, owning some of the choicest lands, building infrastructure? Every summer, they orchestrate their adherents into our homelands for a sort of poverty tour, a sort of so that they can complete their missionary work, so that they can help the poor and less fortunate, like as if that's our lot, like as if that's our purpose, to be miserably oppressed and poor and in need of somebody else's charity, as if we were designed to be the objects of their philanthropy, of their redeeming actions. And to this day, there are churches on multiple, perhaps all Indian reserves, Indian reservations, tribal nations, and they all need to be searching their grounds, their quote unquote school campuses. The grounds could be filled with unmarked mass graves of our children. These are evidence of the murders that they have hidden for generations, and they are now coming to light, and we are in a grieving process. You see it every week. There are new discoveries, and every week there are new churches that are burning to the ground where they stand. I believe that there are now 6 total churches. I believe they're all north of the Medicine Line or the Canadian-United States border. So they're all in now what is now called Canada. That was my last count. 6 churches burned to the ground in what capitalist societies or any society, certainly Western society, would call property violence. If it is at all possible to inflict violence on property. I don't know if property violence exists, but burning churches is going on. I don't know if it's part of our grieving and healing journey. What I do know that it is not just, it is not equitable, it is not right to equate the destruction of property with loss of life. I know that there are no Christian children that are being raped or murdered right now. It's just churches that are burning. Now, some of you might say 2 wrongs don't make a right. That is an axiom that is generally applicable, but these churches are the markings of our murderers. They are the symbols of spiritual theft, and our people are burning them to the ground. Why? Because it hurts. Why do we turn to substance use and abuse? Why do we traumatize and internally oppress each other? Only those around us, because colonization, genocide, and Holocaust hurts. I'm not here to criticize those who are burning those churches. I want our people to heal, and I want the church to give land back wherever possible. I want all those who receive salvation in the name of Jesus Christ to call on their leaders, call on the Pope to recognize, to acknowledge the genocide, the indigenous Holocaust. I want you all to say it out loud, that it is not in the past, that it is still going on. As long as you are present on our lands, so long as you are coercing our children into doubting their own power, their own knowledge systems, their own ologies and isms, their own ways of interpreting and perceiving and expressing reality as the human species knows it. So long as foreigners are on our lands trying to coerce our people into believing in a foreigner's God, you are not my true friend until you are willing to meet us on equal ground, meet us, we the indigenous nations, where we stand, where we live, where we thrive, and until you are willing to tell the truth with us, then we can begin to heal. The indigenous country is in turmoil right now. All that we know, all that we have believed, all that we have been taught to believe is coming undone. The majority of our people have been beaten into submission, have been beaten into spiritual subservience. and they have cast aside those ways of life that have sustained us for untold millennia before the arrival of Europeans. And our people did what they had to do to survive. And we also signed on to do a lot more than just survive by it. We have also signed on to internally oppress our own. And that day of living in the shame, in colonial shame, has come to an end. But it's important for me to recognize that I am not in the majority, but I cannot watch as these discoveries are made and the spirits of these young children cry out to us. We are put in a difficult situation as indigenous nations, and as fully aware that we have allies that are also trying to figure out how to help. How do we navigate this in our time? But I because I'm an indigenous person, I recognize those internal constructs that hold together the English speaking or English thinking metaphysics, those unspoken ways that we know ourselves as indigenous peoples speaking English. We know that we were taught to doubt ourselves, that we are taught to judge ourselves, that we were taught fear of who we are, fear of what we are, fear of our own power, and those intangibles that provide the foundation for how we understand ourselves in this life and our roles within creation. Those internalized automations are now deconstructing from within. Since mass graves of our babies have been unearthed and will continue to surface, we need to brace. We need to embrace each other. We need to strengthen ourselves however we can. It is not our fault that we know reality through the English language. It's not our fault that boarding school, residential school has changed us on a cellular level, has traumatized us for multiple generations. That is not our fault. But it is our fault if we don't do all we can to reclaim who we are, to reestablish what we are, and to take our place as the original nations of this hemisphere. We have to continue to do all we can to make room for our indigenous brothers and sisters, our family, who never knew a way, who were severed from their connection to those sacred ceremonies and protocols, and who did not know how to find a way, but who are now ready to seek that path. We all need compassion in this time, and whatever comes of these discoveries, whatever comes of the burning churches, I hope it's an evolution of the spirit, an evolution of the church that denies the sanctity of Mother Earth herself, denies the sovereignty and the birthrights of other species, other children of Mother Earth. They are not ours to subdue. They are not ours to conquer, to place into perpetual servitude, as the doctrine of discovery says. They are not ours to assert dominion over. We are not the apex of biological evolution on this planet. We are the youngest siblings of our older relatives who also have birthrights. And the church, Western civilization, other civilizations have a lot to learn from us. That includes the Abrahamic faiths, that includes other Eastern faiths, other knowledge systems around the world have pushed aside the indigenous brilliance that we still hold. So I want to encourage you all to stay strong and know that our day is here. Wana hechegla. I know that there's no way to talk our way out of this trauma, but we have to know and let each other know that we are here for each other. And I want to briefly mention that all this internalized dissonance leads us to come together to heal. And I was honored to be present in Washington, D.C. this past week. And I was able to join, and I want to highlight and do what I can to give all respect to the organizers of the Healing Circle that was hosted at the National Indian Gaming Association in Washington, D.C. And if we could, I'd like to show you a brief synopsis of what happened that day. Again, thank you to those organizers, and I look forward to working with you in the future.
Hi, my name's my name's Annie Begay Alls, and I'm from the Water That Flows Together people, born for the Withinishes people. I'm sure everybody has felt the impact so deeply of, you know, all these children that have been found, and we know, as Native Americans, we know there are so many more out there that will continue to be found. And being a mother of small children, I mean, I'm likening it to my own, and I can't imagine the pains and horrors that all these parents have probably felt.
Okay. And so the words to the song go, the time to pray for the children is now. So we thought it would be appropriate that this is just a prayer song.
Everything has a spirit, and we fit within that spirit. And let us go forward with goodness in our hearts. And live for our ancestors that may not have gotten to, that we can fight for those that have suffered these traumas that are unable to speak about it. And we ask our Creator to please watch over us. And please be gentle at this time, knowing that everyone suffers. And I ask that our non-Indigenous relatives please go out and help make this more widely known. It's big news in Indian country. It's something we've always known. But it definitely opens up a lot of trauma when there is proof of that, when there's physical proof of that, something that we've always known. So I'd like this to become more widely known, that this is part of America's history. And hopefully we can go forward, even if we know very little, with songs or words. And we can be the strength of our nation. We can build up our nation again. There was a lot talking about with the 20 babies that were murdered at the Sandy Hook school. And I remember being impacted so much by that. And that really shook America. I hope America understands that this isn't just 20 kids. These kids were not just shot. These kids were abused in every horrible way imaginable. They were ripped from the arms of their
family. Some of their families never got to grieve them. I really hope America wakes up. I really wish this would get the coverage that it deserves, because it goes so deep for so many people. And I really hope people internalize this and try to do what they can to spread the knowledge. I think a huge thing the United States can do is definitely teach the history, the true history of America. Canadians share our history, in that we have, the same history. So I feel like our pain is just starting. They're going to be opening up churches in the U.S. and we just need to pray for strength for each other to get through this.
Thank you so much for what you do, for your time, your energy, and your sacrifice. When a lot of colonizers are telling us to get over it, we ask for your allyship. All of our listeners, yes, we want land back. We deserve land back. We want those still alive, those who committed these atrocities, the priests, the nuns, everybody. We want them prosecuted. We want them held accountable. We want them named. We want the church to learn from indigenous meta perspectives, our worldviews, rather than downgrading them, rather than proselytizing us. We all seek a path to redemption, to deliverance, and salvation. And it's only through bridge building that we're going to make ourselves redeemable in the eyes of creation. And I just want to transition. I can't pay enough homage, enough gravity, and enough attention to everybody's grief. You can feel it. It's palpable. Everyone I talk to is on the verge or in those of navigating that trauma. And I just wanted to take some time to speak on that. But I would also like to transition to another aspect of our lives that is painful, but the symbols, the foundations, the naming, how we form those types of our stories, of our identities, and of our truths must be redressed. We know in settler colonial institutions that we lie. They have lied to us, to the indigenous nations, as much as the descendants of settlers. They have lied to us all. They have denied those truths to us. And while I was in DC, I was able to catch up with those who are organizing to remove the stain. And I'm talking about the Wounded Knee Massacre medals. We just so happen to be in town for Leonard Peltier, but at the same time, this was going on while we were there. And this is years of organizing, years in the making. And I want to thank Four Directions, another organization led by O.J. Siemens, for doing all this groundwork. We were just there to support and participate, and also urge our leadership to continue to support the Remove the Stain. And there were also tribal leaders who were on hand. People like Kevin Killer, the president of the Oglala Sioux tribe, who was also on site for Leonard Peltier's clemency campaign. And quite distinctly, we ran into one of the first Native women congressional reps, that is Sharice Davids. As you know, Deb Haaland is now the Secretary of the Interior. Well, her and Sharice Davids were the first women to be elected, to Native women to be elected to the United States Congress. And Congresswoman Davids' colleague, fellow congressional rep from Hawaii, Ka'ia Li'e Kahele, I may have damaged or butchered that name, but he is a powerful brother who is the sponsor, along with Sharice Davids, of the House of Reps version of the Remove the Stain Act to try to rescind those 20 medals of honor that were given out for the massacre at Wounded Knee. And if you're familiar, it's mostly women, mostly children, unarmed Lakota people were slaughtered and butchered at Wounded Knee. The House version is the companion legislation to Senator Elizabeth Warren's version in the Senate, which was introduced some time ago. Of course, this bill would rescind those 20 medals of honor awarded to members of Colonel Forsyth's 7th Cavalry, members of the same 7th Cavalry that was defeated at the Battle of the Little Bighorn. Those same soldiers came back into Lakota country 14 years later, and you know they had revenge on their minds. There are a host of allies who are also calling for the rescinding of those medals, including Cheyenne River Lakota elder Marcella LeBeau. I'd like to show you a quick video of what we went through there in Washington, D.C.
The Remove the Stain Act is I feel, a really important way for our country to acknowledge when we've done something wrong. And I've signed on to the bill. I'm gonna help push to get this bill passed. There are certainly reasons for our service members to be awarded medals of honor, and what happened at Wounded Knee is not one of those reasons. So we need to fix that. And thank you, Congressman Kahele, for introducing the bill and for pushing so hard to make this happen.
You know, it's an honor for me to be here today, and mahalo nui loa to my colleague, Congresswoman Sharice Davids, for inviting me. You know, it is a historic day, and we stand together here at this sacred memorial in solidarity to correct history by shining a bright and really disinfecting light. And it's great that the sun is right on me, you know, because I feel it, and I'm sure you all feel it as well, on those atrocities that happened over 145 years ago. I want to extend my gratitude and recognize the National Buffalo Soldiers Association for this proclamation and support of rectifying past wrongs for the descendants of the Wounded Knee Massacre. I was honored to reintroduce the Remove the Stain Act in the United States House of Representatives, which will rescind 20 Medal of Honor that were unrightfully awarded to members of the United States Army 7th Cavalry following the Wounded Knee Massacre. We must restore the honor to the Medal of Honor by removing the stains of the past. At the end of the day, we will not allow this injustice to pass on. I am committed, as much as my colleague is, to getting this through the House of Representatives. We will not leave this to our children to deal with. We will deal with this now. The pain and hurt cannot be a part of our legacy, and we will not pass this on to the next generation. So, mahalo for having me. Aloha. Oput. Mahalo.
This is called apology. They say that everything happens for a reason. I was fighting for a place that I belong, a new place I had to call my home. But I was fighting for my freedom too, and so I chose to defend my country, and therefore made an enemy out of you. Yes, they say everything happens for a reason, but the shedding of my brothers for the sake of who belongs, there can never be a reason. For that, I apologize. I apologize for the hate because I really had none. I apologize for the sorrow because both sides lost. So I felt your pain too. Again, I apologize because we can never undo what was done, change what was suffered, get back what is gone. I can only say that I am sorry. I'm sorry. And from this day forward, may I stand with you and never against you. I'm sorry. May peace forever be our guide and bind all that we do. This is my apology from me to you.
Proclamation of the National Buffalo Soldiers Association. With solidarity and reverence, the Buffalo Soldiers Associations, on behalf of our members, families, and friends, and the descendants of the 9th and 10th Cavalry and the 24th and 25th Infantry Regiments of the U.S. Army, proclaim our unwavering support of our Native American brethren. Our proclamation is a humanitarian gesture, not a political one. Anger, fear, and untruths are dividing our nation and endangering the democracy for which some of us have fought and died. The darkness that pervades our national conscience awakens us to proclaim our unwavering support of our Native American brethren and stand for the sentiment embodied in the Remove the Stain Act. We honor soldiers of all colors, national origins, and religions. And we pay our most heartfelt respects to the Native American veterans whose heroics are honored by the solemn National Native American Veterans Memorial that we are blessed to preside at today. The act pursues rescinding medals of honor awarded to those American soldiers who perpetrated the horrific decimation of 300 non-combatant young men, women, and children of the Lakota tribe at Wounded Knee Creek. The act honors those lives lost. It dishonors a dark tragedy in our nation's past, and it serves to heal open wounds. And it moves the arc of our nation's path towards peace and justice. The suffering at Wounded Knee Creek has in some ways passed across generations. We mournfully read of the pervasive sadness that persists among the atrocities, or that persists among its descendants. We know too well that people can remain traumatized today by the atrocities that occurred long in the past.
We now stand alongside our Native American brothers, sisters, fathers, mothers, and sons, and of course daughters. We march with them on the right side of our history, and the right side of our justice. Our ancestors fought a combatant in war, and now we come as brothers in peace. Thank you.
What I'd like to do is introduce the next speaker, and that would be Marcella LeBeau. Many people don't know about Marcella. So Marcella is 101 years young, and she is a World War II veteran, and she was an Army nurse, Normandy, part of D-Day, Battle of the Bulge. And so when Marcella tells me to do something, I move faster than I've ever done before. So with that, I'd like to bring Marcella up and let her say a few words.
Good morning, everyone. This is a historic day, and I'm so glad that we are able to be here in support of the bill, Remove the Stain Act. And our friends, the Buffalo Soldiers, we're all together now. And I will thank you all for being here. And thank you, Raya, for standing beside me. Thank you.
Again, we will certainly keep you all updated on Remove the Stain, which is also in the fight to make sure that the radical fringe in this country, they're not the radical fringe, they're the well-capitalized and the people for whom the privilege and immunities in this country were designed to benefit. And we're talking about property owning, slave owning, founding fathers, white, male, heteronormative people. That's how this country was designed. And we are in the fight of our lives to make sure that we are not ignored, that our rights are protected. And we look forward to building those bridges and removing that stain, that is the 20 medals of honor, which were given for that conduct on that fateful day, December 29th, 1890. Now, of course, you know that we were in Washington, D.C. on behalf of the International Leonard Peltier Defense Committee, which organized Free Peltier Days in Washington, D.C. and took over the National Mall in cooperation with other organizations that just happened to be there. We were there to urge clemency, to demand clemency for one of the United States' longest serving political prisoners. Now, that is Leonard Peltier, a living casualty of COINTELPRO, counterintelligence program. Some people were asking me, bro, what is COINTELPRO? COINTELPRO is the clandestine operation, the covert criminal operation of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, which probably had component parts in the Department of Justice, the NSA, or the precursor to the NSA, the highest levels of USA intelligentsia, colonial intelligentsia, the bureaucrats, presidents, I mean, J. Edgar Hoover type people who for the longest time were able to declare who was a terrorist in this country. These people would have considered Martin Luther King a terrorist, just like Malcolm X, just like Russell Means, just like John Trudell. They had the sole unchecked authority to declare you a terrorist. You, we, meaning those of us who are trying to challenge the racist, financial, extractive warmongering of the United States for the longest time, and perhaps to this day, through the Patriot Act, through the National Defense Authorization Act, they may still be able to declare us to be terrorists because we want to stand up to the despotic nature of capitalism. We cannot let them control that label because we are patriots. Everybody who stands to protect Mother Earth, to protect the land, the waters, and the sacred sites in what is now known as the United States, whether you're indigenous or whether you're an ally, you are a patriot. And Leonard Peltier defended Mother Earth. He defended tribal sovereignty, self-determination, and for that, he is a politically imprisoned patriot. In fact, because of the Reign of Terror, which Leonard was not allowed to put on evidence of the entire Civil War context that caused indigenous nations to defend themselves against COINTELPRO, we were not allowed our day in court. But because of those struggles and those sacrifices, every tribal nation in what is now called the United States was pushed forward, was evolved by legislation like the Indian Self-Determination and Education Assistance Act. This is where the process of 638ing comes from, and that's just for my tribal folks who might know what that means. Also, the American Indian Religious Freedom Act was passed in 1978 as a direct result of these struggles, for which Leonard Peltier is still serving unjust political imprisonment. We were not allowed to pray out in the open and conduct our ceremonies out in the open without fear of criminalization and violent reprisal until 1978. That is also the same year that the Indian Child Welfare Act was passed. All of this progress came from that struggle and from that sacrifice. There is no progress that comes without struggle, but the sacrifices that were made at that time need to provide a different outcome. We need to bring Leonard Peltier home. He is recognized as a political prisoner by Amnesty International. Luminaries such as Mother Teresa have called for his clemency. The Dalai Lama, Nelson Mandela, Archbishop Desmond Tutu have all called for the clemency of Leonard Peltier. Deb Haaland, when she was a congressional rep, called for the clemency of Leonard Peltier. Raul Grijalva, a currently serving congressional rep, has called for Leonard Peltier's clemency. 55 other members, including Nancy Pelosi, 55 other members of the House of Representatives and the Senate, including the late Senator Daniel Inouye, have called for the clemency of Leonard Peltier. And we join that luminary force to finally free Leonard Peltier and begin to right the wrongs and the brutalities that were inflicted on Oglala Sioux tribal members, members of other native nations, and members of the American Indian movement. There are between 57 casualties, 57 murders that have been unsolved, uninvestigated, or just chalked up to exposure. And families are still suffering to this day. I live on Pine Ridge now. And just to think, to imagine that my family was murdered a mere 40-some years ago and nobody was investigated, nobody was prosecuted, nobody was arrested, nobody was charged with any crimes, nobody was held accountable. That is lawlessness, and the FBI is the United States is responsible for that running massacre known as the Reign of Terror. But we were in Washington, D.C., and we were very, very fortunate. I chalk it up to kismet. I chalk it up to synchronicity that other organizations like CASA, while they were advocating for a pathway to citizenship for quote unquote illegals, and we're talking about indigenous children at the border of the United States and Mexico, who are still being trafficked, who are being kidnapped, who are being housed in influx facilities. Instead of children in cages, we call them influx facilities now. CASA organized a huge march on the mall, and they invited the Leonard Peltier Defense Committee. They invited indigenous peoples onto their stage to share encouragement, perspective, and ceremony. And I want to thank those singers, those people who brought the drum, those people who came 1,000 miles and more to be there for Leonard Peltier. I want to thank CASA. I want to thank the Black Voters Matter organization, led by, among others, Latasha Brown. But Latasha was the sister that gave us the platform of Black Voters Matter. They're also seeking statehood for Washington, D.C. And we've got some footage of the activities that we were blessed to be a part of in Washington, D.C. Again, I want to thank those organizations. Controller, if we could please roll that in.
We also said we're in utter solidarity with all movements for justice. We want to free Leonard Peltier. Everybody say, free Leonard Peltier. Free Leonard Peltier. We welcome now the Leonard Peltier Defense Committee to the stage. Please give them a round of applause.
All freedom to all the people. All power to all the people. We made a lot of progress, my relatives. Kola Iyuha Ichichiab. My name is Chase Iron Eyes from the Leonard Peltier Defense Committee. We want you to know that we are in this struggle with you. We know that black is beautiful. We know that you are our beautiful African indigenous brothers and sisters. We know that you have a connection to the sacred universe. You have power within you, just like we do. But we also know we cannot settle for platitudes. Juneteenth is a marker of progress. It shows that the President of the United States, the Congress, the Senate, they cannot ignore our power together. We put them in office, and they must do more than Juneteenth. They must free all political prisoners. Just like Mumia Abu Jamal, Sundiata Akoli, Mutulu Shakur, Jalil Mutakin, Leonard Peltier is doing all of our time, and we can't stop, we won't stop. We cannot stop, we won't stop. We know that black votes matter. This is our moment. Our relatives, this is our moment. They cannot ignore us. We are power together. Undeniable, unconquerable, dignified power. Feel that wind bless you, my relatives. All power to all the people. All power to all the people. My relatives want to free all political prisoners. Wow, I mean, energy from that. Again, Lila Wopila Tranka Ichichaplo. There are no accidents. I don't know. We can't explain how all of that was made possible. But I want to thank everybody. And again, if you're just tuning in, please share this stream. Please like, comment, and also subscribe to our podcast. Wherever you listen to podcasts, just search for Cut to the Chase Iron Eyes. You know, we have sponsors. Our flagship sponsor is Lakota People's Law Project. There's also Last Real Indians. There's the Leonard Peltier podcast, Leonard_pod. These are all organizations that helped us do the work that needed to be done in Washington, D.C. Now let me pivot, because I want to finish tonight's episode with the fight against the financial extractive war machine. As we always do, whenever we can, we highlight line 3. Lakota People's Law Project sent representatives, sent support just to be there to provide whatever they could, whatever is appropriate. I know that Line 3 is seeking frontliners. I know they are seeking arrestables. They are seeking people who are at their edge and who are willing to exercise their natural rights and their constitutional rights. And I want to highlight the work that they're doing because they are under attack right now. And I'm talking about the Red Lake Treaty Camp, led by and personneled by, among others, Sasha Bolio, Sam Strong. They, I know, were raided. They were under attack. Also, the GNU Collective, personneled by, led by, among others, Tara Hauska, who I know from reading their press release at the GNU Collective that Namawag camp was raided by Hubbard County. They were served a notice that they were going to deny access to the camp, which is on private land. Essentially, you have a county sheriff that is funded by Enbridge announcing that it's going to landlock and block the only ingress and egress to this private land, and that they were going to put it under siege. And if that sounds like illegal activity, I agree with you, and I want to encourage you to go follow GNU Collective, GINIW Collective. But in the meantime, we have caught up with Brother Myron Dewey of Digital Smoke Signals, who is on the ground in Anishinaabe Treaty Territory, also Dakota traditional homelands. We are also people of the wild rice. We are people of those waters and those sacred areas that are under attack from Enbridge right now. But with that, I want to show you an interview, a piece that Myron Dewey and Digital Smoke Signals were generous enough to provide us. So if we could roll that in, please.
This is Myron Dewey with Digital Smoke Signals. Ahoba Shinami Agaitika, a strong thinker. I am Paiute Shoshone, and we're here with Justin up at the White Earth Camp. And for those of you guys who don't know where I'm at right now, it's Line 3. I'm at one of the 5 or 6 camps that are here, and just going around meeting people, seeing what the needs are. And for Digital Smoke Signals, we're out in our homelands protecting our Mother Earth from a lithium mine. So we got a lot to learn from each other as Indigenous people, what our struggles are collectively together. And I'm going to turn it over here to Justin.
Ani buju obabi benes indigenous kas maingan into them gawa babi ganaka gadushaba ganisha gamug and kabidakos. My name is Justin Keyser. I'm known as Laughing Bird to our people. I'm Wolf Clan, and I'm from White Earth, Minnesota, from a small town named Natawash. We've been on a pipeline fight here for going on, 8-9 years. And what we're dealing with is a lack of consultation that has developed between our government and the United States government and the state of Minnesota. Somehow we've come under the plenary power, I believe they call it, of the state. And it's not supposed to be like that. We're at Noman Genowin Doug and Dujika Basic. It's a wild rice protector camp. We're only a mile away, maybe, from our lower rice lake. It's a lake that provides wild rice for our people and has since we got here. Our prophecies told us to go where the food grows on the water, and this is where we ended up in northern Minnesota. I'm a member of the Minnesota Chippewa Tribe White Earth Band, grouping of 6 bands in Minnesota of the Minnesota Chippewa Tribe that ultimately is known as we have a TEC. It's an IRA government that the U.S. government established for us in the 30s, I believe. And what they have done is they've used these businesses to conduct business, to allow different things like pipelines, mines, all these things that are depleting our resources. In reality, the resources that belong to us as indigenous nations, indigenous people of this continent, the original people here. They've allowed these construction companies, not just Enbridge, but like local companies like Knife River, to come in and take our water out of our water table and out of our aquifers. And we've noticed a significant amount of droppage in a lot of lakes and a lot of rivers around. Our lake, as of a couple weeks ago, looked like a football field. There was no water. There was barely any water in it. We need that water in there for that rice to grow. We see it as an attack on us as a people, because that wild rice is so ingrained in us as people. It provides for us mentally, provides for our body, it provides for us spiritually. We use it for our ceremonies to, what you eat it almost year round. I eat it almost every meal I can. We use it to barter and trade. We as a means of monetary. That's how we pay for school clothes. As some people, is how we pay for Christmas presents. And if we were to not get a rice crop because of the things that they're doing, it would be devastating to us as a people. It provides so much, not only for us, but for the local economy. And we feel that there's a lack of adequate consultation with the people when it comes to this. We as Minnesota Chippewa tribe, our band, White Earth, has been fighting this pipeline. We had one of the 6 bands that agreed to allow that pipeline to come through. That is not right in how this is supposed to work. We're supposed to have a referendum vote. The government knows this. The federal government knows this. But they've allowed this to happen with the state of Minnesota by giving the state of Minnesota, because they're lazy and don't want to deal with us. They gave the state of Minnesota power over the people here, when in reality we have long-standing treaties with this government that says we are supposed to have a government-to-government relationship with the United States. So anytime they come through and they try to do any of these types of big construction projects or anything else, their government is supposed to come in and talk to our government. And not only are they supposed to talk to our government, but we're supposed to have what's called a referendum vote of the people. And we're supposed to reach a certain percentage of the people to be able to allow that to continue and to go forward. We feel that there is a lack of that. We have camps all up and down this pipeline right now of different actions that people are taking, whether it be direct action or treaty action like what we're doing.
You're sharing with me a little bit about the water.
Yeah.
And one of the things I shared with there's no water in it. You were saying what that pump was for.
On June 4th, they approved a new water permit. So they got it approved at a 500 million gallon, and then came back in June and applied for a new permit. And they said they were amending the permit, but it's a brand new permit, and it should have went through a whole new permit process where we had 30 days comment period and everything else to be able to deal with this. But we were denied that consultation again.
So what are we seeing now with that, with the water?
We're seeing that the way they were doing it before is they'd dig a trench and they'd lay a hose in there and they'd suck the water out, because the water infiltrates, because the ground is level with our water table. Mm-hmm. So when they dig down in the ground, that water wants to fill that up. And what they were doing is pumping it out, and they'd dig a big hole in the ground and they'd pump the water into there, because they're supposed to filter it before they put it back into the ground, or into the river. And what was happening is those fake lakes that they were making were failing, and it was leaking, just going right back into the river. Mm-hmm. Without it actually infiltrating. They call it infiltration, to be able to fill our aquifer back up. So now what they're doing, like a big hole, and they let that hole fill, and they're just sucking all that water out, and they're doing the same thing. They're just putting it in some place where they're holding it, and it dries all the water out around it, so that they're just digging all these holes all along this pipeline to be able to do this. And it's real deceptive, and it's real damaging to our environment what they're doing. They like try to act like it's safe and everything else, but our elders have been saying, no, what you're doing is damaging our water and it's hurting everything.
Yeah.
And now we're seeing the results of that. The lakes around here, you can see I mean, some of them it isn't bad. Some of them it's a foot, you know, that they're low. Some of them, I mean, like our Rice Lake, 1.5 feet maybe, you know, I mean, and some people they don't think that's much, but when you're looking at 10, you know, a lake that's 5 miles long, 10 inches of water on that lake is a lot of water, and it's not filling our aquifers back up like it's supposed to.
Not to mention all of the thousands of gallons they're using on the road to keep the roads dry as well.
Yep.
And so with these final comments here, where do people go to find more about Line 3, the camps, and who do you want coming?
We for most of the camps, we expect people to be self-sufficient, self-reliant. Don't come expecting that we're going to take care of you. Be able to hold your own in some of this stuff. Yes, we do provide some stuff, like we'll provide meals. You know, if you need we could probably work something out, get somebody a tent or whatever. But you know, be self-sufficient, be ready to go, because there's some of the camps are doing direct actions and they're doing lockdowns and stuff. Us ourselves, we're doing a more subtle approach with the treaties and engaging and educating people and trying to bring that awareness to it at a bigger level, because we believe that we should not be engaged with the state with this, that ultimately the president of the United States has the power to shut this pipeline down, and we just need to make enough noise to make that happen. So we appreciate that everything that you guys bring in to help us do that. You know, all these organizations, they got Honor the Earth, 350, Indigenous Environmental Network, and a plethora of other organizations. Yep, Line 3, Stop Line 3, stopline3.org. There's that are out there. There's all kinds of information out there. Start looking into the 1855 treaty, 1863 treaty, Red Lake, making our stand along the Red Lake. This is bigger than what water is going to become a scarce commodity in the coming future, and a lot of people don't realize that between the Great Lakes and where we're at in Minnesota, we have 95% of the world's remaining freshwater. You know, so this is an important fight that we're in right now. You know, water in the next decade could become a scarce commodity because of the pollution and the things like pipelines leaking in our water and everything else. They've already had, you know, Kalamazoo. They had the Cohasset. They had a bad spill a few years back in the 60s. They had a huge spill near Pinewood, Minnesota, and we still have anywhere from, you know, a foot to, or, you know, 17 to 23 inches of oil on our aquifer the way it is right now up near Pinewood, Minnesota. That's where my dad lives. What we're seeing is an increased elevation of arsenic in our water because they discovered a microbe that eats the oil. But in order to do it, it needs iron, and that iron in the water is bound to arsenic. So when that microbe uses that iron to be able to process that oil, it leaves that arsenic in the water.
How can people support this camp?
I know that they have, if you can't make it here, that, you know, call your legislators. You know, I know planning on doing some blasts where they're going to say, call your legislators, call the White House, try to make a local demonstration. If you can make it to camp, come to camp. There's tons of different ways that you can help. If you want, you even have your organizations. If you help monetarily, that helps carry us through to be able to do these things that we need to do.
So I want to thank you. I'll add those links into the bio here that you guys can share. And
Miigwech
Miigwech
Guys Coalition.
Bijat Oh.
Wow. Thank you for that. We will continue to monitor that situation. Lakota Law has people on the ground. Digital Smoke Signals has people on the ground. We always want to point you to GNU Collective, Terra Hauska, Red Lake Treaty Camp, Sasha Bolio, and any others who are there in resistance, who are being targeted for exercising their natural rights, their birthrights, and their treaty rights. And speaking of those who have sacrificed for the greater good, who have placed their bodies in harm's way to protect Mother Earth, to protect Miniwi-Choni, to make sure that our children have clean drinking water and healthy ecosystems. You might have heard on one of our episodes, we caught up with Ruby Montoya, and her and Jessica Reznicek engaged in acts against property, and they are being politically targeted for those acts. Now, Ruby Montoya is going to be sentenced July 29th. I want her to know that we did not forget about her. We hold her in our voices, in our conscience, in our intentions. But Jessica Reznicek was just sentenced to 8 years. That's 8 years in a federal prison. And I did not get the chance to catch up with Jessica, but I just want you to know that your sacrifice is not going unnoticed. We want the U.S. Attorney, we want the Department of Justice, we want President Biden to commute the sentence of Jessica Reznicek and the forthcoming impending sentence of Ruby Montoya. These are two women who made that sacrifice to protect this country, who made that sacrifice to protect the clean water, our children's access to clean water and healthy ecosystems. And they are now being imprisoned politically. We cannot let this happen. We have the opportunity, the ability in this country. We are the ones who put President Biden in office. We are the ones that made sure the blue team controls the Senate and controls the House of Congress. Now, we cannot give them any daylight. They deserve no pass. They are not the party of working class Americans. They are not the party of morality. They are also subservient to the corporate state, to the warmongering. I mean, every president has bombed somebody in the Middle East since as far back as my brothers and my relatives served in those wars. Same presidents are denying Medicare for all. Same presidents are not absolving and forgiving student loan debt. Same presidents are allowing people like Jessica Reznicek to be sentenced to 8 years in prison for defending our lands and our waters. We cannot let this happen. They do not get a pass. To me, it doesn't matter if it's the red team or the blue team. We need to keep the pressure on those who were elected to represent the people of this country, the working class people and families of this country, those who are being pushed into desperation, those who are making those choices to go to whatever front line it is that is calling them. And I want to conclude tonight's episode of Cut to the Chase. Again, this is number 22. So we are clipping right along. Every single week you can expect fresh material from us. And on the weeks that I will be sequestered or encumbered by ceremony, we will record new material for you. Yay, faithful people who have tuned in since day one, people who have subscribed to our podcast, please do so. Again, thank you to Lakota People's Law Project. Thank you to Last Real Indians. And for these episodes, thank you to the Leonard Peltier podcast at Leonard_pod and the International Leonard Peltier Defense Committee at Peltier HQ. Again, this has been Chase Ironaz. It's my honor, privilege, duty, and obligation to express those truths that we all share, that we all know deserve to be expressed, not just in the grassroots or in the underground, but in the mainstream. We have to continue to push. Please continue to share this stream, continue to subscribe, and let's grow. Let's also put others on. I mean, I'm not the only voice out there, but I know that I have a duty to do what I can to make sure that we can create the kind of reality that our children deserve. Again, Lila Wopila Tonka, this has been Cut to the Chase, and I am out.